Nobody expected the words perfect balance to spark such a storm across the tennis world. Yet when the WTA quietly mentioned those two words while discussing Eala, the reaction was immediate. Fans began asking questions. Analysts started debating. And suddenly, one of the fastest rising stars in tennis was at the center of a conversation much bigger than a single player. Because when the WTA talks about balance, it rarely means something simple. And when that conversation involves Eala, a young player whose rise has captured the imagination of fans across continents, the tension becomes impossible to ignore. But what happened next changed everything. To understand why the phrase perfect balance is suddenly everywhere in tennis conversations, you have to look at the journey of Eala herself. Because her rise wasn't just quick. It was the kind of rise that forces an entire sport to stop, look again, and ask a difficult question. What happens when the future arrives faster than anyone expected? And behind the scenes, the pressure was already building. For years, Eala had been known in tennis circles as a promising talent. Coaches talked about her discipline. Scouts admired her composure. Analysts noticed the way she seemed comfortable under pressure, even as a teenager competing on some of the biggest stages available to young players. But promise alone doesn't shake an entire sport. Results do. And when those results started appearing, the reaction was immediate. Fans began following her matches more closely. Commentators began discussing her potential on broadcasts. And gradually, a quiet narrative began forming around her name, that Eala might not just be another talented player, she might be something more. But that was just the start. Because the moment a young athlete begins to break through, another force enters the story. Expectation. Expectation from fans who want to see a new champion emerge. Expectation from media outlets looking for the next headline. And expectation from the sport itself, which must decide how to handle a rising star who suddenly attracts attention from every direction. And that's when the real tension began. The WTA has always faced a delicate challenge. On one hand, it wants to promote rising stars. New faces bring new audiences, new energy, and new stories. A young player capturing attention can help grow the sport worldwide. But on the other hand, tennis is built on competition. Established champions, experienced contenders, and emerging talents all fight for the same spotlight. Balancing those forces is never easy. And when the topic of Eala began appearing in conversations about the future of women's tennis, the phrase perfect balance quietly entered the discussion. At first, it sounded harmless. After all, every sport needs balance between promoting young players and protecting the competitive integrity of the tour. But as more details emerged, fans began wondering exactly what that balance meant. Was the WTA trying to protect its established stars? Was it trying to carefully guide the rise of a young talent? Or was it simply responding to the growing global attention surrounding Eala? Nobody expected what came after that. Because the moment those comments became public, the reaction from fans was intense. Across social media, discussions exploded. Supporters of Eala celebrated the recognition of her rising influence. Others questioned whether the phrase perfect balance hinted at deeper concerns about how rapidly she was climbing the tennis ladder. The reaction was immediate. In the Philippines, where Eala's success has already inspired millions of young sports fans, the conversation took on an emotional tone. To many supporters, she represents more than just a tennis player. She represents possibility, a new chapter, a new symbol of global success for a generation watching her journey unfold in real time. And when the WTA began discussing how to handle her rise, many fans felt the spotlight grow even brighter. But behind the scenes, things were getting even more intense. Inside the world of professional tennis, every rising player creates ripple effects. Coaches study their playing style. Opponents adjust their strategies. Tournament organizers watch carefully as audience interest grows. And media outlets begin asking the question that always follows a breakthrough star: how far can this player go? For Eala, that question has been growing louder with every match she plays. Her composure on court, her ability to handle pressure, and her steady improvement have made analysts take notice. She's not simply competing. She's evolving. And evolution in professional sports is never ignored. What happened next changed the conversation completely. During discussions about the future of the WTA Tour and the development of emerging players, officials began mentioning the importance of maintaining competitive balance across the tour. In theory, this meant ensuring that opportunities remain open for both new talents and established champions. But the moment Eala's name appeared in that context, fans connected the dots instantly. Because to many observers, her rise had already begun shifting the spotlight. Every sport eventually reaches moments when the next generation begins knocking on the door. Sometimes those moments happen slowly. Other times they arrive suddenly, with a player whose presence forces everyone to pay attention. And in tennis circles, many believe Eala may represent exactly that kind of moment. The tennis world reacted quickly. Commentators debated whether the WTA's comments were simply standard language about player development or something more significant. Fans speculated about how much attention the organization was giving to the young star's growing influence. And behind the scenes, analysts began looking closely at the bigger picture. Because the truth is, the rise of a new tennis star doesn't just affect rankings. It changes narratives. It changes fan engagement. And sometimes, it even changes the direction of the sport itself. But that was only the beginning. As the conversation about perfect balance spread across tennis discussions, the media started asking a deeper question. Why now? Why was this particular phrase appearing at this particular moment? Some observers suggested the WTA simply wanted to emphasize fairness and stability within the tour. Others believed the organization was acknowledging the growing spotlight around young talents like Eala. And then there were those who thought the phrase revealed something else entirely, that the tennis world might be preparing for a shift in power. Because if Eala continues developing at the pace she has shown so far, the implications could be enormous. A new global fanbase. A new competitive threat. A new story unfolding across tournaments around the world. And that possibility has made the tennis world watch her even more closely. Fans know it. Opponents know it. And the WTA certainly knows it. But what happened next surprised even longtime observers of the sport. Instead of fading away, the phrase perfect balance kept appearing in discussions about player development, scheduling, and tour promotion. And every time it did, Eala's name was never far from the conversation. For supporters, this felt like confirmation that her presence was already influencing the narrative of women's tennis. For critics, it raised questions about how sports organizations handle the rise of young stars. But for Eala herself, the reality remained simple. She still had matches to play, opponents to face, and expectations growing with every appearance on court. And that's where the story becomes even more compelling. Because the true test of a rising athlete isn't the headlines surrounding them. It's how they respond when the pressure becomes impossible to ignore. Throughout tennis history, many young players have experienced moments when the spotlight suddenly intensifies. Some thrive under it, others struggle. The difference often comes down to one thing: resilience. And in recent months, Eala has shown signs of exactly that. Every match she plays adds another chapter to a story that fans around the world are watching unfold. Every improvement in her game sends a signal that the future of women's tennis might include her name among its biggest stars. But the real drama lies in what happens next. Because when a young player reaches this stage of attention, the road ahead becomes even more challenging. Opponents prepare more carefully. Media scrutiny increases. Expectations rise higher with every tournament. And the question that once felt distant suddenly becomes unavoidable. Can this player truly become one of the defining figures of the sport? The tennis world doesn't know the answer yet. But the reaction to the WTA's comments about perfect balance revealed something important. Eala is no longer just a promising talent. She is now part of a much bigger conversation. A conversation about the future of tennis. About how the next generation will shape the sport. And about how organizations like the WTA manage the delicate balance between celebrating new stars and protecting the competitive structure of the tour. And that conversation is far from over. Because if Eala continues rising, the debate about perfect balance may become even louder. Fans will keep watching. Media will keep analyzing. And every match she plays will add another layer to a story that already feels larger than a single player. But perhaps the most powerful part of this story is what it represents. For young athletes watching around the world, Eala's journey shows that determination and talent can push through even the most complex challenges. For tennis fans, it offers the excitement of witnessing a potential star in the making. And for the sport itself, it raises an important reminder. The future often arrives sooner than expected. And when it does, the entire world of sports has to adapt. So, as the WTA continues searching for what it calls the perfect balance, one thing is already clear. Eala's story is only just beginning. And the next chapter may be even more surprising than anyone imagined.